Hello and welcome to this very quick presentation on what is an essential safety measure in Victoria. So in Victoria, the definition of an essential safety measure is set out in Regulation 214 of the Victorian Building Regulations. We're going to scream through this slide deck so we can pack as much information as quickly in your valuable time. But before we do, let me briefly introduce myself. My name is Russ Porteous. I'm the founder and CEO of Firewise. I've been involved in the fire protection industry for over 30 years. Have been involved in the development of the Australian Standard 1851, in particular 1851 2012, and the latest edition of Australian Standard 2293 for emergency lighting. I'm a director of the Fire Protection Association here in Australia. I would consider myself a content creator, and some would even say that I'm a bit of a technical expert when it comes to fire detection and warning systems. A little bit about Firewise. We help building owners, agents, property managers and owners corporations by providing competent and reliable fire and essential safety measures maintenance that improves fire safety for buildings and their occupants. So let's dive briefly into the definition of what is an essential safety measure, which, as I said earlier, is covered in the Regulation 214 of the Victorian Building Regulations. So Regulation 214 is broken up into four parts, Part A, B, C, D. And so Part A defines essential safety measures as those listed in Schedule 8 of the regulations. And shortly we're going to go through Schedule 8 at a very high level and try and communicate as quickly as possible what that list of safety measures are. Item B of the regulation says any other item is essential safety measure if it is required and designated by the relevant building surveyor as an essential safety measure. In most occasions, this will be listed on the occupancy permit for the building or the maintenance schedule for the building. Item C from the regulation says that we must also include any other essential safety measure defined in Regulation 1202 of the Victorian Interim Building Regulations of 2017. Now, I have to say that list is almost identical to the list for the current regulations, but it's important to note that it covers any other essential safety measure listed in the interim regulations. And lastly, any other measure defined or required for the safety of people and required to be provided under the Act or any previous corresponding Act prior to July 1, 1994. And normally these things are picked up by the relevant civil building surveyor as covered in Item B, but just in case they've covered it here as well. So let's quickly go over what essential safety measure categories are listed in Schedule 8 of the Building Regulations. And as I said earlier, you can find out more information about this on our website at firewise.com.au, or if you want to contact us directly, you can go to the contact page of the Firewise website. So the first one is building fire integrity. It's a big, broad category that covers building elements that are required for prescribed fire resistance levels, fire doors, wall wetting sprinklers, elements required to be non-combustible. So it's a very big category. In fact, we have a whole separate presentation about what building fire integrity covers. Means of egress, again, another medium-sized category here. It covers things like paths of travel to exits, discharge from exits, smoke lobbies, access ramps, and doors other than fire and smoke doors in a required exit. Signs. Most people would be familiar with exit signs in buildings, but it also covers other types of signs. For example, signs alerting people that the operation of a door must not be impaired, fire notices in alpine areas, those sorts of things. Lighting covers emergency lighting in buildings. So emergency lighting is a form of artificial lighting, but interestingly, artificial lighting is not specifically covered in Schedule 8. However, I have seen building surveyors list artificial lighting as an essential safety measure in certain circumstances. It also covers firefighting services and equipment, so that's things like hydrant systems, fire hose reels, automatic fire sprinkler systems, and it also and portable fire extinguishers. But it also covers fire control centres or rooms in buildings. You can search the Firewise website for more information about fire control centres and rooms. It also covers air handling systems, so they're things like smoke control systems, atrium smoke control, smoke exhaust systems, smoke pressurization systems. So they're the heat and smoke control features of mechanical ventilation systems. I think that's a better title, and I think that's the same title that's used in AS 1851. We're going to cover also another type of air conditioning system in a minute, but also we're covering automatic fire detection alarm systems. Broadly speaking, there are two types of fire detection alarm systems in buildings. There's heat and smoke alarm systems, and there's also smoke and heat detection systems. The operative words being their alarm system and detection system. So that's covered in another video on our website. We also cover occupant warning systems. So there are two types of warning systems in buildings. There's sound and intercom systems for emergency purposes, also known as emergency warning and intercommunication systems. They're covered by Australian Standard AS 1670 Part 4, and we also have occupant warning systems, which are covered by a different Australian standard, and that's Australian Standard AS 1670 Part 1. There are some lifts are also defined as essential safety measures, and that includes things like stretcher facilities in lifts, emergency lifts, and emergency lifts with fire service controls. Standby power systems might also be included in the list of essential safety measures. Building clearance and fire appliances is an interesting one. It typically applies to shopping centres, but it can apply to other buildings, which includes things like open space around large isolated buildings and vehicle access around large isolated buildings. And the last one, I said I'd talk about this, is mechanical ventilation and hot and warm cooling water systems. So this covers things like cooling tower systems and the like. We don't cover that at Firewise. If you need more information, you can visit the website. We do have an article which gives you more information, but it's not something that we do inherently. So there's your list of 12 different types of essential safety measures. As I said earlier, this is very similar to the list set out in the interim regulations, but I also just want to remind you that sometimes there are other items that need to be included, and they're things like there are other items required and designated by the relevant building surveyor, and as I said earlier, these things are typically covered on the occupancy permit or maintenance schedule for the building. Just to remind you also that there might be other items defined in Regulation 1202 of the interim regulations from 2017. And finally, any other measure for the safety of persons covered under the Act or previous corresponding Act before July 1, 1994. Normally these things are swooped up and by the building surveyor as part of a maintenance schedule, but just in case the legislation covers this as well. So in summary, an essential safety measure is a safety measure defined in Schedule 8 under the Victorian Building Regulations 2018. It also includes any other item required and designated by the relevant building surveyor. It also includes any other item defined in Regulation 1202 of the Interim Regulations 2017. And lastly, any other measure required for the safety of persons or by the Act or any previous corresponding Act before July 1, 1994. Lastly, if you want to learn more about what is an essential safety measure or essential safety measures maintenance, or you're just interested in contacting Firewise for more information, you can visit us at firewise.com.au. Thanks for joining us. I hope this presentation has helped you understand more about what is an essential safety